Yo, 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 what's up, guys? It's your boy Chris back at it again with another episode talks for you guys. And this episode is going to be about tips on becoming a better animator, part two. And if you haven't watched part one, go back and watch part one and come back and watch part two. And a disclaimer, this is just my, opinion. I'm just sharing my experience as an animator thus far. By no means or whatsoever, I'm claiming that this information is the exact factual information or tips that I'm giving you guys. This is just my experience and I'm just sharing with you guys. Alrighty, moving on. So, tip number one on how to become a better animator, part two. Number one is going to be background art. Now, background art, this is where it's really going to set the tone and the feel and the vibes of the animation. Is really going to make it more. It's going to make it more alive. It's going to make the world more existing. This is where, color theory is very important, to understand. And the best example that I could think of off of the top is the 1994 or 95 Batman animation show by WB. I don't know if WB Studios created the actual animation or they just, were just there to, produce it. But that animation alone, really dove deep into the aura of Batman, somewhat of the darkness of Batman. There's another Batman animation too. If you watch Batman Year One, is pretty good, pretty close to it. But getting back to that, the '90s Batman, that really set the tone from the background, from the shadows, from the black and brown, a little bit of the blue in there. Just from that background basis, it sets the mood. It sets the vibes of it. And, with background art or with animation in general, a lot of people are not going to tell you this, but what I've learned from not only doing animation, but also going to school for, digital media, there's tricks and tips. I don't want to say tips, but tricks that you can do in order for you to, whether, you lack in certain art skills in. So, as an artist, we can't draw every single thing. So with background art, I know for me, that's one of my weakness. However, there are websites where you can look for free graphics. It's just, a simple Google search. You just Google, free background graphics or whatever the case may be. And it will direct you to a royalty free website that you will be able to use the background. Be careful with it because not everything on there is listed as free. Some of it do want you to pay like a premium, but just look for the free ones. Just look for the free ones. And once you use the free ones, what I do is that I trace it. I trace the background. I modify it into my own particular style. That way, the background is very natural. It's very true to, my artistic style with my characters, So background art, it's another thing that you would need to start experimenting with. It just overall just makes it, like I said, it makes, the animation have, a mood. It makes the animation have, of a, personality. Step number two is that when you're animating, use different layers. So when you're doing, background art, whatever program that you're using, make sure that you're layering your your things. So for example, if you're doing background, have a layer where it's only for backgrounds, have your other layer for whether no have your other layer for one character, have your other layer for the second character or the third character, have your other layer. I know for me, if you want to use captions or if you want to use emojis of expression, have that to be a layer. The reason being to use different layers is because, from my experience of what I've learned in my early stages of animating a couple of years back, was that I was doing everything on one layer. The problem with doing everything on one layer is that once you go to another keyframe, which another keyframe is pretty much like another scene, you would have to redraw everything you did on that first keyframe. So since everything is on one layer, every time you're drawing a new scene, you have to redraw it over and over and over again, the background and all those things. It's just going to create more work, and the background, particularly the background, it's not going to be, as accurate. Your animation characters is going to be slightly off, but really what's going to suffer the most is the background. The background is not going to be, accurate at all, and it's not going to look, consistent. So use different layers when you're animating. And the third one is that when you're animating, rewatch the animation. So, let's just say you're doing an animation and you split up the animation into three parts of your work. So basically you will have the first part, which is like the introduction or yada, 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 the second part of the story and the third part of the story. Whatever you are from the first to the second or all the way through, rewatch your animation, rewatch it. The reason why is because you want to have the keyframe organized well. The keyframe helps with a little bit of the pacing. It helps with a little bit of the pacing, so it will help with the pacing, and most importantly, I would say transitions, to make sure that the transition of the scenes are not necessarily smooth, but it's a good idea of, what you want to do as far as the pacing and the transitions. Another thing too, with whatever animation programmer that you're using, is to have a set speed. Automatically, it would usually be at 100%. If it's at 100%, then the animation is just going to go pretty fast. And sometimes, when you're watching animation like on TV, it's not all one speed per se. There's times and moments of where certain speeds are slower than others. So that's another key thing to look for too once you're watching it, is to understand what keyframe goes where, as far as how long you want it to transition into another scene. Then also be track on your speed, because the speed is important. So that way people are able to comprehend of what they're watching with, the animation. They're able to comprehend, and it's not just one speed. And they're like, oh man, I missed this. What does that say? What is this? What does that say? So keeping track on the speed, because all in all, once you're editing in a production, or if you hire somebody to edit, it makes it a lot easier for them to do. It gives them a clearer, understanding, because if the keyframes are just not organized in the sense of you're not knowing of how many frames that you want to skip to get to that particular part. And all the key frames are just all like kind of just, you know, one scene is one frame, then the other scene is a two frame. Once it's like that, the animation is pretty much, I won't say it's not going to work, but it's pretty much at that point you just got to throw it all away because the keyframes are not organized the way it should be. So instead of saying one scene I'm outside, the second scene on the keyframe, I'm, playing basketball, instead of just having those keyframes side by side, split up the keyframes to make it to where let's just say not necessarily a stretch, but it's more coherent, especially when it's coming down to where you're trying to point something out. So for my experience with my bubblegum series is that when I'm introducing a character, right? I'm introducing the character. Boom, the character is on one scene. Then I would have my text by saying this is Paperboy. You know what I'm saying? And the other caption is that Paperboy likes to play basketball. Right? If those things are if I don't understand how to organize those keyframes to pretty much not only show you of who the character is, and to also tell you about the character. If I have a lack of understanding with that, you're gonna miss it because of just the way the keyframes are organized. It's just going to just keep going from one frame to another frame, then according to the speed. Like I'm telling you, bro, the whole animation is going to get messed up. So understand how many keyframes you want to skip in order for you to get to the next scene or the next caption. So rewatch your animation so that way you could get a coherent animation viewpoint. Because like I said, once it gets into the production, the only thing that the production does is just makes it a lot more cleaner. It makes it a lot more smoother. And speaking of production, my bonus information for you guys is that to add sound effects. So when you're in, your production and you're stretching it, you're cutting stuff, you're doing what you need to do. Sound effects is another important aspect. It's also related to the background. In a way, they're related. The sound effects would really make it alive. It will really make the world breathable and alive. And with sound effects, I know that we can't just create every sound effect, or even if you try to record a sound effect, let's just be honest, a lot of us don't have the appropriate equipment to, record sound effects. However, there are free sound effects website that you can use to download sound effects. I would recommend using Pixabay, Pixaby, Pixie.com. You can use royalty-free sound effects, background music. You can just download that and add it on your production. Because without sound effects, it's just nobody's not going to hear anything. There's no living, with the animation. So sound effects creates the living and breathing aspects to, the world, with their animation. So yeah, guys, that's all the information that I have of becoming a better animator part 2. Again, this is just, my knowledge on what I've learned of being an animator for the past, 3.5 years. And this is what I love to do. I love sharing, sharing, educate, educating you guys on just what I love to do, man. You know, I'm more of a self-taught. I never had like a teacher to really teach and sit down, so I had to really like, you know, do a lot of it on my own. Of course, y'all can watch YouTube videos on that stuff, which what I do, but this is just me just giving back to the community that I love, with animation and all that stuff. So other than that, all in all, guys, always remember, Jesus loves you. See you in the next episode. Peace.